Welcome to what may be the greatest Marshall in a box pedal on this planet.
Just play the damn thing.
Yes, this is the RD Hot Rod Compact pedal from Origin Effects. RD standing for Revival Drive. If you are not familiar with the Origin Effects Revival Drive, it's one of the best overdrive pedals out there. Again, also based on a Marshall, is my understanding. This is the hot rodded version of that. Origin Effects reached out to me and and said, "Here, we want you to try this pedal." So they sent it out to me, and basically they said, "This is what it is. This is what it's called." And they said, "So what you're," and I said, "Well, it sounds to me like it's kind of a," so it's exactly what you think it is, and it's right. It's a hot rodded Marshall, it's a hot rodded Marshall type of overdrive / distortion pedal. It's not really labeled as either one of those. It's labeled as a amp in a box. Classic amp topology is what it says there on the pedal. You can see there on the bottom. So, I kind of expected it to be more of the hot rodded plexi thing, and it certainly does some of that. But I think it kind of leans more towards the higher gain, like JMP, Marshall JMP, and JCM 800 type of stuff. Because there's a lot of those tones in here as well. Now you're getting ready to hear the full track that I recorded with this. I don't normally do this, but I actually just used the sample settings that it lays out for you there in the manual. And I used the modded plexi, which is the one here on the left. I used that one for the rhythm section. And then the thrash, what do they call it? The thrash plexi? Yeah, the thrash plexi is what I used for the lead stuff. And like I said, it's labeled as plexi. I mean, like I said, I hear a lot of those JMP, JCM 800 type of sounds in there as well. Anyway, I don't normally do this, but I set but those are the settings that I use for this full track demo. Partially because I wanted to see, I wanted to hear their suggestions, and it turned out I actually really, really like them, and they really probably my two favorite settings in this pedal. So, give this a listen. Just like on a real Marshall amp, these controls are very, very interactive with each other. Specifically, the blend and the blend and gain controls. That's the blend. That's the gain. These two interact together quite a bit. And then the presence knob also plays a pretty big role in it as well. And then of course the others are output highs and highs and lows. The other thing that the rest of these controls that you see down here on the bottom that are also really interesting. First, we'll start with, what do they have that labeled as? Just ADJ, so the adjustment knob, I guess we'll call it. Basically, that kind of fine tunes the treble response of the entire signal. So if you're not getting quite enough, or you're not getting or you're getting a little bit too much, you can fine tune the overall treble response with that control. So kind of think of it as like a second presence knob, I guess. The other switch is also very interesting. You'll see it has EQ1, EQ2, and then pre. EQ1 and EQ2 are, if you're plugging this thing into the front end of an amplifier, if you're plugging it into a brighter sounding amp, you obviously use the darker EQ setting. If you're plugging it into a darker amp, which is what I'm demoing it through, then you would use the brighter setting. Like I said, most of that you'll see the difference and how big of a difference that there is between one and the other. Here in the playthrough demo, the Laney IRT Studio that I'm using again is definitely a darker sounding amplifier. Finally, the P/amp, the preamps mode. That is for running it either into the effects loop, the return port of the effects loop of your amplifier, essentially bypassing your preamp section, or running it direct into a mixing board or an interface of some kind, something like that. Basically, you set it on there when you're using this pedal as a preamp, and I'm going to demo that here as well. So if you've gotten to this point in the video, thank you so much. First of all, please consider hitting the subscribe button if you haven't already. It really, really does help out a lot, and of course, I'm always trying to grow the channel. And let's face it, as a viewer said to me here just in the last day or so, the algorithm has not been kind to me over the years. And it costs you nothing to hit the subscribe button, or the like button, or the dislike button on any of my videos. Also, if you got to this point in the video, I recognize there's a lot in this pedal. It's gonna take a little bit for me to show you everything. Please stick with me, because I'm saving the preamp part for the end, and I think you're really gonna enjoy that. So, without further ado, I'm gonna demo this thing using my $5,000 guitar into my $1,500 amplifier, into my I don't even know how many $1,000 worth of studio gear I've got, into my $800 set of studio monitors, so that you can hear it. Because who doesn't have that? So that's what this thing sounds like on the front end of the amp. Now I'm going to run it direct into the interface. Just the only thing between this pedal and the interface is a noise suppressor. That's it. And on the preamp mode, again, we'll play around some of the same settings so that you can hear the difference, how this thing sounds as a preamp versus being used as an overdrive / distortion. Here we go. Okay, this is my first experience with Origin Effects. I've always been curious about Origin Effects. I've never really had a chance to try these things out. These are high-end pedals. These ain't cheap. These are made in the UK. Well, just feel this thing. This thing's heavy. But these, these are expensive. This pedal runs $419. $419, and this isn't even their top end. Extremely well made. There's the Made in UK sticker there on the back. And like I said, I think this thing just became my brand new favorite Marshall in a Box pedal. Like, by a lot. Origin Effects, RD Hot Rod Compact. Links down in the description. Subscribe if you haven't already. And adios.